episode of the Jesus Agenda. My name is Pastor Chad. I'm here with my good friend, Pastor Steve, and we are going to be addressing, I think really this show is going to be taken up a lot by the Ukraine, Russia, USA entanglement, but we will try to get to each of our segments. We try to talk a little bit about politics.
At least for 30 seconds.
Right. A little bit about religion and a little bit about culture. And we do have stuff for each one of those. So hopefully we won't go over too long. I do want to say right at the beginning, if you would like to sponsor a show, you can email us. And DJ will put the email up along with our website address to our podcast. You can email us, tell us who you are, that you have a company or a ministry or something else you'd like us to plug, and send $20. We'll tell you how to do that when we email you back. You can also support us, and that can be done for as low as $3 a month. And you can do that by going to our podcast website on Buzzsprout and look up at the top, and there'll be a support tab. And that would help us very much as we continue to try to grow the podcast. And please like and subscribe to the YouTube page and the Facebook page, and then share it with your friends and family. Preferably share it through emails and text messages, just because that way we know we're getting through. Because a lot of the stuff that we put out is not. We noticed that when we put it on Facebook, it doesn't really get a lot of traction. So anyway, most of us at this point have seen what took place in the Oval. Was it Friday or Thursday? I think it was Friday actually.
It was Friday.
President Zelensky from the Ukraine coming to meet with President Trump, and with a lot of, Vice President Vance, but also a lot of high-level cabinet members. And then by the end of it, now I don't know, most people probably only watched.
They didn't show 20 minutes of it on the TV either.
Well, and the whole meeting was 59 minutes.
Yeah, exactly. They didn't show part of it.
My wife and I actually watched it from start to finish, and it was really not until that last 5 minutes that, there was some maybe some jabs a little bit, like undertone type things that were going on, but nothing as vocal as the last 5 minutes got after JD started talking. So most people have only seen that 5 minutes. That's what they're basing the whole thing on. So I would encourage you first, after you watch this show, if you haven't watched that whole presser, go onto YouTube. It's on YouTube. You can find it. I watched it from Forbes's website or Forbes's YouTube page, and you can watch the whole thing unedited. And that, by the way, gives you the benefit of hearing all the reporters' questions.
Including, do you own a suit?
Including, do you own a suit? Who is that guy?
That was awesome.
I don't even know who that guy is, but I have noticed in the press conferences that his press secretary does, he always asks sort of softball questions. So he's definitely a conservative. He's not asking very tough questions, but yeah, he was kind of, I thought that was actually kind of rude, to be honest.
No, it was the best question.
It made me laugh, but I figured,
even Elon Musk wears a sport coat when he goes into the Oval Office.
Right, when he carries his chainsaw to cut things up. But anyway, go back and watch the whole presser in the Oval so that you can get some context. Context is not just important.
Context is king.
Right, it is. It's not just important when you're reading something. It's important when you're watching something.
Yeah.
Especially, we've talked about AI before, but especially in this world of AI. And we will, in a future episode, have to talk about Grok 3. I did finish watching that.
Crazy?
Video, yeah. If you have Twitter, Grok is on Twitter. I don't know if you knew that. And it won't, I don't think it talks yet, but the beta is out for talking. So anyway, go back and watch that presser. But we wanted to talk about it because, and I've said this before, and I know I've said this in private conversation with Steve when we've had conversations, but I think it's even come up on the show a couple of times when we've talked about other things. There's a lot more going on here than meets the eye. This is a much more, and it has been from the very beginning, a much more complicated situation than what our nightly news is giving us, on either side, by the way.
Yeah, a lot more complicated. And that's true about anything, right? Like, anything going on geopolitically, they're not telling us everything. We don't know what's going on in the back rooms. We don't know the hidden motives. We don't know people's motives. Is it power? Is it money? Is it actually victory? Is it fear? So we just never know the motives.
Yeah. So not long after that, a guy that I know on Facebook posted this, and I'm not going to read all of it, but I did want to, because I shared it with Steve, and I did want to read just a little bit of it, because he's saying, you know, probably everybody has seen this video footage, and you might be thinking to yourself, oh,
it was awesome.
President Trump just screwed up. And we're getting, there's a lot of, I mean, even Ted Cruz made some comments the other day. I mean, he wasn't crazy about it, but he was basically saying, no, we got to keep supporting Ukraine. This is what this guy says. Trump has, I want you to notice what you think you saw and what actually happened. And he says, Trump has been under constant political persecution. Over time, he has learned to be patient and calculated. Zelensky was invited to the Oval. Both Trump and Vance knew exactly what Zelensky was going to do. He would use this opportunity in front of the American people to make a power play. Mm-hmm. And if you go back and you watch the entire presser, that's exactly what he does throughout the whole interview.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know the backstory. Before this presser, he was in the United States
with the Democrats.
Yeah, and he was in the United States, and he said he wasn't going to do the deal, and then he left, and he said, "Okay, I am," and then he said, "I'll come back to sign the deal." He came back, and that's when this, in front of the press, he kind of threw us. Stick into the spokes,
right,
and use the press to try as like a power move, basically,
yeah,
and
absolutely, Well, and
when he gave every impression that he was going to sign.
But here's the thing: it's not just that previous trip; it's literally the day before he met with Trump. He was meeting with the Democrats.
Yep.
And one of the Democrat senators has come out and said that we encouraged him to not do the deal. And then he shows up at the White House
and makes a show of it in front of the media.
So this is what this guy's saying. So Zelensky began appealing to the emotions of the American people. Now we're going to go from the beginning of the presser to the last 5 minutes. Mm-hmm. Once this really gets kind of, you know, it's almost like Zelensky is giving his wind-up pitch now. And he's been pitching throughout the whole process. That's when Vance steps in. So let's go back and, again, go back and watch the whole thing. Vance and Trump are very patient throughout the whole process as Zelensky says things that are clearly off script. This is not why you're here, but this is what he's saying. And now it's the last 5 minutes, and Vance is like, you know what, I can't take this anymore. I'm gonna put you in your place. You know, you've come here to make a sales pitch in front of the American press, and that's not acceptable. So actually, instead of saying that Vance and Trump were disrespecting him, this is actually the best play they could have made, because they knew exactly what Zelensky was going to do. So they let him sit there, they let him talk. Trump knew that this was going to happen, but he wasn't going to allow it to, you know, end that way. He also knows that if Ukraine's allowed to join NATO, then what? We're bound to put troops on the ground, period. We wouldn't have a choice because we have to back NATO as part of the collective defense agreement. Now think about the larger implications. He says Ukraine and Russia despise each other. If Ukraine became a member of NATO, any future skirmish would obligate us to enter into direct conflict with Russia. If that happened, who else would enter? China. Now we've gone from 0 to
World War III
to 60 on World War III. So what you witnessed tonight, this guy says, was a setup. Trump and Vance knew that the only way to achieve peace was to strategically align, at least on the surface, with Russia. Why? Because Russia would never sign a peace treaty if Ukraine were admitted into NATO. So he goes on with some other stuff that he makes some really good points. And you know what you said about more on this in a minute, and we will get to that. But another thing I would point out is, one of the things that Zelensky says throughout the interview is, you know, we have to have security provisions. We have to be guaranteed security. Well, think about it. If you sign over these mineral rights, it's going to be American workers who are there digging up the minerals.
Then if there's an attack, then it's an attack on America.
Right. Yep. And so do you honestly think that Putin is going to attack Ukraine while Americans are working in that region? I mean,
American company, American.
He doesn't want to risk war with
Right.
us. I mean, and I said this. I think we were talking about this.
That's the genius in what Trump was doing. By
Right,
the way. It benefits Ukraine because it gives them protection. It benefits the United States because we get minerals.
Yeah, and this is going to be
rare earth minerals, which we need right now badly.
This is going to, especially with Taiwan up in the
AI
air,
and
right? We don't know what's going to happen with Taiwan. If we don't have access to those minerals, we can't make those chips.
Because most rare earth minerals are in China.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Right. And Taiwan has the ability to make the I'm going to call them microchips. That's not right, but it's the microprocessor chips.
Yeah,
or something we use them in our military.
Something like 90% are made there. Yeah. It's crazy.
But a lot of the minerals are coming from China, so we have no access to anything. If Taiwan goes up in smoke because China invades, which I don't think China will do, at least over the next 4 years. And if we're lucky, for the next 8 years after that. But the reality is we need access to these minerals to be able to create these technologies ourselves and to be self-reliant. So it's good for Ukraine, it's good for us, and it does provide that security that Ukraine wants, that that Russia's not going to attack. What Ukraine really wants is the Aegis ballistic missile defense system that's on land. That's what they want. They want, and we'll bring that up because we're going to show a clip of RFK explaining this whole thing, but that's what they want.
With his beautiful melodious voice.
Yeah, with his great voice. I still need to know what's wrong with his voice.
I forget the name of it. He has a disorder. I can't remember what it is.
Yeah, okay. I was going to say it's probably...
So we can't make fun of him.
Yeah, no. Well, you can. It's just not very PC to do, right? But then again, I don't know that either one of us are that PC.
Yeah.
So, but the reality is that what Zelensky wants is he wants missiles. He wants warheads. He wants nukes. He wants this, that.
That he doesn't have to pay for, by the way.
Right, that we would pay for. Yeah. Now, I thought it was another funny thing. If you notice when the France's president, and by the way, is his wife really
Macron?
A man?
Huh?
Is his wife really a man?
I don't
Macron's
know.
wife. Have you not been following that with Candace Owens?
I don't know. I didn't know.
She's like beating the war drum.
What's Candace Owens on now?
She's on her own.
Okay.
She's on her own, but I have her on my Facebook page, and it's like every other clip is her saying that Macron's wife is a man. Oh. And the more she says it, the more I've
heard that Michelle Obama's a man. I've heard that one.
That could be possible, but I don't know. If you look at Francois Macron's wife, she definitely looks like a man.
Do look like a lady?
Yeah, and I'm guessing she had the money to fund his campaigns, and that's why he married her, because she's like 85, and he's like, I don't know that she's really that old, but she looks that old. But we're getting off topic. But when Macron was there at the White House, Trump would say, yeah, you guys got your money back. Are you getting them? Oh, no. And he starts giving every around the bend reason why that's not the case. And Trump looks at the press and goes, you can believe that if you want to.
Well, they just signed mineral rights with UK.
Well, and we're gonna put that up on the screen. Maybe DJ can do that right now. That let's see if I can read what it says. It came from the New York Times. So it's definitely not a conservative paper.
The New York Times, that conservative bastion of truth?
Yeah, right. Hold on a second. Where did it go? Did I give it to you? I must have given it to you. You know what? I did. It's in the text messages. So let's see here.
For you who don't know, Chad and I have this ongoing stream. So just because he sent me a text message this morning,
it could have been like a week ago.
It could be. Well, the stuff from this morning could be
here we go.
Could be like 5 minutes of swiping back.
Actually, I don't know what paper it came from because I blacked that out. But this is off of the UK's government site, UK-Ukraine 100-year partnership declaration, and the highlighted area says supporting development of a Ukrainian critical minerals strategy and necessary regulatory structures required to support the maximization of benefits from Ukraine's natural resources through the possible establishment of a joint working group. So how are they signing?
Is that a snub on us? Obviously,
well, and the thing is, it was
this
done
happened before it.
It was before us.
Okay, so can they have with both of us then?
So it's like you ask a girl to the prom,
yeah,
and then apparently you forget about it, and you ask another girl to the prom.
I mean, can both of us have mineral rights there?
I don't know. I didn't dive deep enough into it to know that.
And because if UK is there and they get an award
then we get
defending Ukraine, then we're going to be drawn in because UK and us are like best buddies.
Yeah. So the way I was kind of looking at it was,
in that case, we have nothing to gain but only stuff to lose.
And the way I was kind of looking at it, or at least the way I maybe just the way I processed it was, with things up in the air with the U.S., this is a good way for Ukraine to get the U.S. in anyway.
Exactly.
Because of what you just said. If the UK
so are we being outmaneuvered? That's what I'm wondering. I don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't understand. Like we said, we don't understand everything going on with this.
Yeah, and that's the whole issue. But I do think that it's just important for us to encourage, what's the scripture verse that says, he who speaks first,
sounds right. Yeah. But then another man speaks and it sounds.
Yeah. So we need to practice listening. Yeah. And for me, listening involves researching as much as you possibly can.
Exactly.
About a particular issue, especially if you're talking about something that, look, I have a son who's 14, so I have a vested interest in not wanting to go to war with Russia or with anybody over there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I don't. Well, and my older son is
We're too old
30.
To draft.
I'm too old to be drafted, but I think under 45 you can still be drafted.
DJ can be drafted.
Well, he can't go. We need him for this.
So is that an official exemption?
Yeah, that's an official. Yeah, that's going to be like. I don't know what the cutoff.
DJ's wearing.
Cutoff is 45.
So you can be drafted.
Yeah,
and he's already wearing camo. He's already wearing camo, and he's quite well built.
That's because he's an undercover Lutheran at a Methodist church.
No, he's not.
That's why. That's what it is.
If anything, he's undercover Catholic.
It could be. Like I said,
I seen the
undercover Lutheran.
Yeah.
Touche. So anyway, back to the subject at hand. We did do some digging up on some stuff, and there's some things that have come to light, over a period of time. So that's one of the first things that we saw. Here's Ukraine making a minerals deal with the UK. How can they make a minerals deal with us? Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, obviously, our government was aware of that at some point, that this has been done. Then we have what Vance says, and we'll get to that. Actually, let me skip over that. We want to talk a little bit about the history of this and why this whole situation is so complex. I saw a post the other day where somebody, throws out there the Budapest Memorandum, which was signed by the Clinton administration and the Ukrainians and Russia and all this other kind of stuff, or not Russia, and maybe Belarus and a couple other places. And one of those things in there is line 4 or Article 4 of that agreement is that if we see Ukraine being the victim of someone else's aggression. First of all, most of the document, if you read the document, is about us not attacking Ukraine. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's what most of the document is about. But then number 4 says, not only will we not attack Ukraine, but if we see Ukraine being the victim of an aggressor or under threat of nuclear attack, it doesn't say we will defend. It says we will do anything we can to help Ukraine. Okay? So I've seen multiple posts from rhinos, Republicans in name only, and of course leftists over the last few days that have said, see, we have to defend Ukraine. We don't have a choice. It's the Budapest Memorandum and all this. And of course, so I go and I read the Budapest. To me, the obvious thing when I see something like that is, well, what does the Budapest Memorandum say? Let me go read it. Now I'm looking, I'm like, okay, I don't think it says what you think it says.
Chad, don't you know you're just supposed to go with whatever your party line is saying?
Absolutely.
You're not supposed to actually research.
You're not supposed to think. You're not supposed to think. There we go back to DJ's thinking problem. You're not supposed to think.
DJ actually thinks he's got a real issue.
DJ thinks. It's not that he has a problem thinking. It's that we were discussing overthinking versus thinking earlier. Folks, it's a confession here. We were discussing Calvinists, what's wrong with Calvinists. And that's going to be a whole nother show later on. Do Calvinists have any holidays that we can make fun of them on? They don't.
Is there a John Calvin Day?
I don't know, but there should be. Just so we can
bet there is.
poke
DJ,
fun at
can you
him.
look up if there's a John Calvin
Can you
Day?
see? While we move on, you tell us if
We
there's a
gotta
John
celebrate
Calvin,
John Calvin Day.
We'll just do it on his birthday. We'll just do it
Yes.
on his birthday. If there is not a John Calvin, that would be a great show. Instead, because they
John Calvin roast?
No, but no, we'll call it Celebrate John Calvin Day with us.
Yes.
And then we'll just talk about all the reasons why you
Listen.
shouldn't celebrate John Calvin's theology.
There has
But
to be a
anyway,
John Calvin Day.
Anyway, so there's this whole backstory to
Like a
this
feast
that
day.
goes back. Yeah, right. There's this whole
Answer for you.
You do? Go ahead.
So it says here. Oh, gotta turn my mic. I think.
Usually helps to turn it on. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know if you can hear me.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
If all fails, turn it on.
So it says, another distinctive feature of Reformed Protestantism was its remarkably small number of official holidays. Calvin himself saw no need and no scriptural basis for any holidays other than Sunday.
That's why the Protestant
so
work
there's no
ethic
John
is
Calvin
actually
Day.
a Calvinist work ethic.
There's no John Calvin Day.
No,
I'm kind of.
I'm telling you, we're making it.
Let's make one.
We'll make one.
The Ides of March.
But that, by the way, this is a really interesting thing to look into, because that's where the Protestant work ethic comes from. It's really a Calvinist thing. It's not. It just gets blanketed to everybody, but it's really just them, because they
Like Martin
it's
Luther
such a-
Day is really Reformation Day. That's when everybody talks about.
Yeah, I mean, we do have a day. I mean, we do recognize. So for the church, historically, the church recognizes saints on their death day, not on their birthday. Birthdays are a relatively modern thing. So we would, but I mean, I can't think of the last time I did a post on Martin Luther's I Died Day. So I usually will do a Reformation.
Luther's I Died
Day. This is Martin Luther's I Died Day. So we always get Reformation Day because of that, and we usually do. I'll usually put something out for the anniversary of the Augsburg Confession or something like that. But so we're gonna come up. That'll be a later episode, because we just love picking on Calvinists,
But we love you, Calvinists, brothers in the Lord. You're just wrong.
I'll be charitable towards the meaning of charity is love.
Okay, I love you, Calvinists.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically the Arminians are closely related, sort of. You're just on the
Don't
other
tell a
side
Calvinist
of the coin.
that.
Yeah. They don't like that. Well, anyway, okay, let's get back to the Ukrainians and the Russians, because they get along better than Calvinists and everybody else. So anyway, we're going to show this video, and I have to cue it up, and DJ will put it on the screen, but we're going to watch RFK. This was actually when he was still running for president. I think it was like 2022. He's on the Wayne Dupree show, and he's giving sort of this backstory and the history of, why is there such a problem over here, and remember I said a ways back, Russia is not the big bad wolf in this story, which is not an excuse for everything Russia's done.
Yeah. We're not
but
saying
there's a
Putin's
lot
a
of
good
stuff
guy.
going on. Yeah, I'm not saying Putin is, a saint, but there's a lot going on here, and RFK does a really good job of explaining it, so we'll throw the video up, and then we'll discuss it a little bit.
I don't know how we actually openly go and defy this idea that we don't give Putin the fact that he is in control of the nuclear arsenal, that we want to sort of pick that fight and battle that's been going on for a long time there. And I just wondered, as president, how do you manage that?
Putin every day says, I want to settle the war, let's negotiate. And Zelensky has said, we're not going to negotiate. But Zelensky didn't start that way. I don't want to, belabor the history, but Russia was invaded 3 times through Ukraine. The last time Hitler killed 1 out of every 7 Russians. They don't want to have Ukraine join NATO. So when the wall came down in the Soviet Union, Europe, Gorbachev destroyed himself politically by doing something that was very, very courageous. He went to Bush and he said, I'm going to allow you to reunify Germany under a NATO army. I'm going to remove 450,000 Soviet troops, but I want your commitment. After that, you will not move NATO 1 inch to the east. And we solemnly swore we wouldn't do it. Well, then in 97, Brzezinski, who was the first of the neocons, said, we're going to move NATO 1,000 miles to the east and take 15 countries into it and surround the Soviet Union. So then we not only move it into 14 new nations, but we unilaterally walk away from our 2 nuclear weapons treaties with the Russians. And we put Aegis missile systems in Romania and Poland 12 minutes from Moscow. When Russians did that to Cuba in '62, we came this close to nuclear war until they removed them. So the Russians don't want nukes 400 miles from Moscow. We then overthrow the Ukraine government. In 2014, their elected government, and put in a Western sympathetic government. Russia then has to go into Crimea because they have a port. It's their only warm water port. And they know the new government that we just installed is going to invite the US Navy into their port. So Russia then went into Crimea without firing a shot, because the people of Crimea are Russian. Then the new Ukrainian government we installed started killing ethnic Russians in Donbass and Lugansk, and they voted to leave and join Russia. Putin said, I don't want them. Let's give them protection and give them semi-autonomy and make an agreement to keep NATO out of Ukraine. That treaty was written by Germany, France, Russia, and England, the Minsk Accords. And the Ukrainian parliament, which is controlled by ultra-rightists, and that's a nice way of talking about them, refused to sign it. Zelensky runs in 2019. He's an actor. Why did he get elected with 70% of the vote? Because he promised to sign the Minsk Accords. He promised peace. He gets in there and he pivots. Nobody can explain why, but we know why. Because he was threatened with death by ultra-rightists in his government and a withdrawal of support by the United States by Victoria Nuland, who's the leading neocon in the State Department. We told him he could not sign it. So then the Russians go in. They don't send a big army. They only send 40,000 people. It's a nation of 44 million people. They clearly do not intend to conquer Ukraine, but they want us back at the negotiating table. We won't allow Zelensky to go back. So he goes to Israel and Turkey and says, will you please help me negotiate a treaty? The Russians just want a guarantee that Ukraine won't join NATO. Zelensky signs the treaty. Putin's people sign the treaty. And Putin starts withdrawing the Russian troops in good faith. And what happens? Joe Biden sends Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister, over to Ukraine in April and forces him to tear up the treaty. And since then, 450,000 kids have died who none of them should have died. For every one Russian that dies, 5 to 8 Ukrainians die, and they don't have any men left. You know, we're giving them all these weapons, but they don't have men left. It's a catastrophe, and we look kind of like the aggressor. That's the way the rest of the world sees us. Please go to Kennedy24.com.
The first thing you notice in that is that Zelensky does wear a suit. He has worn a suit in the past.
Right.
That's the most important takeaway.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think
if that suit still fits him or not, nobody knows.
I think he probably wears the get-up because, you know, of the war, and most dictators wear the military uniform.
I know.
Yeah. So, I mean, that is a very expansive thing. The only thing in that video that I questioned a little bit with the editing maybe was the Aegis ballistic missiles. That's a defensive missile program. So the fact that a defensive missile program is 12 minutes from Moscow.
It's not a nuclear program.
It's not a nuclear program. It's ballistic missile defense. So it's kind of like the Iron Dome that Israel has. So, you know, and I Googled, and I knew that off the top of my head, so I Googled it. Can it be used in an offensive way? And it can't be. So I'm wondering, I tried a little bit to find the original program that was edited from. And I know it's out there, but I ran out of time. So other than that, everything else I did like quick Google searches on, and it all is accurate. And I actually remember when Russia withdrew troops and the Minsk Treaty was signed. I remember that because that was not very long ago. So, and I know we were talking about Crimea before, and I said, look, the whole thing with Crimea is a lot more muddy than the media is letting us believe. So if you put into context what happened in this presser with what RFK is talking about 2 years ago, he doesn't want to sign an agreement. As he's saying in there, I'm not going to sign an agreement without security measures. I'm not giving up land.
We broke our agreement.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So,
with Gorbachev.
Yeah. Well, and here's an interesting thing though about that. And when you bring that up in certain I agree with that.
They would say, "Oh, the USSR doesn't exist anymore."
Right. That's what the argument is.
But still,
the argument is that the USSR no longer exists, that the Soviet states, of which Ukraine was one, are all independent, and so we can't transfer an agreement we made with a non-existing government to
I guess I see that argument. Yeah,
it is a valid argument, but I don't think. I mean, do you honestly think that Gorbachev, when he made that agreement, thought that the USSR was going to survive this? This breaking of the dividing line between East and West.
They just don't want NATO bordering Russia, and for self-defense.
And who can blame them? By the way,
no.
Who can blame them?
This whole thinking that Russia bad because big, Ukraine good because small.
Right.
That logic doesn't hold up. We're not saying either one of these people are good people. I think Zelensky is possibly as much of a thug as Putin. He's just in a small country that's being attacked, so everybody thinks he's a saint.
Yeah, and even if he wasn't a thug before he got into power, now he is a thug.
Yeah.
And let me give you a little bit of an inside track on some of his thuggery, because
just the elections, no elections.
Well, just no elections is one thing, but let's bring it, since this is we're a Christian show. Let's bring it into the world of the church. And this did not make major headlines. I only knew about it because I know so many Eastern Orthodox Christians and a few priests. The way the Orthodox world works is, so you're a Roman Catholic because your church is in union with Rome. Okay, that's not how it works for the Orthodox. They don't have a single bishop that they point to that you have to be in union with. The Orthodox will call you an autocephalous church, which means that you're a national church who can choose its own head, its own bishop to lead it, because every other Orthodox church recognizes you as such. Okay.
Yeah, the Patriarch of Constantinople is not like a pope.
Right. He's not like a pope. He's he's essentially taken the Pope's old title, which was first among equals. That's how they treat him. It's always a good idea to get him on your side, but it's not required. As long as the other churches recognize you as an Orthodox church, you're an Orthodox church. Okay. So the recognized Orthodox church in Ukraine was not an independent church, not an autocephalous church. It was an extension of the Moscow church. So while the Ukrainians had sort of like a senior bishop at the top, they went back to the Patriarch of Moscow, right? This guy gets in power. The invasion begins. He goes around and by the way, the overwhelming majority of Ukrainian Christians are Orthodox. The overwhelming majority of Orthodox Ukrainians are members of that previous Orthodox church. Okay?
The Russian Orthodox
The one
church?
connected to the Russian church. It was actually called the Orthodox Church in Ukraine, but it was connected to the Russian church. When all of this happens, the Zelensky government goes around and starts taking all the property from them, locking their monks up in jail. They took.
Or they accused them of being spies.
They accused them of being in coercion with. And then what they did is they set up their own Ukrainian Orthodox church. Here's the thing: the only other Orthodox church they've been able to get to recognize them is Greece, under the Patriarch of Constantinople. Not a single Orthodox jurisdiction in the world recognizes them. And that's caused, by the way, wider divisions in the Orthodox world, where now some priests that I know, like, for example, I know a priest who's an Antiochian priest, he can no longer say the Divine Liturgy with his Greek Orthodox friends. So it's caused worldwide divisions. So that's just a bit of thuggery right there. And I remember seeing things even a year ago, where they were taking monasteries and kicking people out, and they're having these big protests over that. So, and then of course there's the no elections, but then we have another bit, right, that was brought up in the presser. They're forcing, like kidnapping young men off the street to conscript them into the army. So I found another video. DJ's going to put this up while we watch it. This video is
this isn't the first one of these I've seen.
No, there's plenty of them on YouTube. You can go on YouTube and find it. But this is a video of Ukrainian soldiers chasing down a young man who's just walking his dog.
I feel so sorry for that dog.
He knew they were coming for him too.
Yeah, he yelled.
But I mean, that's an unmarked van. Mm-hmm. How'd he knew they were the military, so it's got to be happening all the time.
Yeah. He saw them stop and just knew what was going on. And they just leave the dog.
Right.
I'm not saying it's all about the dog.
No, but still.
It's like it's kind of heartless. And he's going to be stuck into the front lines where he's going to be just meat in the meat grinder.
Right.
You know it.
It's actually hard to watch.
Yeah, it yells of terror. Well, they're running out of men in that country. If you're a single guy when this war's over, Ukraine's the place to go. Dogs chasing after the
dog's trying to get his owner, right? Yeah, so I mean, it's obviously not going well if you're kidnapping citizens off the street to put them on the front line. And like you said, Trump brings that out in the presser. He's like, "Look, you're on open fields. Everybody knows what's going on here. It's just a shooting gallery." Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think with all of that context, it's hard not to see what transpired on the part of the president and Vance in that Oval Office presser. It's hard not to see that as a positive, especially as concerns what's going to happen. Is there any way for them to win this war? No. There's no way for them to win this war.
All he wants is more money from us.
Right.
And to be in,
so where's the money going?
And to be in NATO. Those are the only two things that Zelensky wants.
Right. And the only way they win is if they get in NATO.
Yeah. And I hope
and then everybody gets...
That's what he knows.
Yeah.
Or he could win by doing this treaty with Trump.
Right.
This thing with Trump, but they have to give up that piece of land.
Right, which now at this point they don't want to give up the Donbass, but they're not going to be able to not give it up. I can't see how they stay... keep the territory that they had prior to.
Do you think Europe's going to coalesce and help?
I think that they've
boots on the ground.
I don't know. They're saying the UK saying they're going to send soldiers. In what role? I don't know. France is saying the same thing.
I hope we stay out of it.
I hope so too, because they just there was just a meeting. I think France, the UK, and maybe Germany just after the UK Prime Minister came and met with Trump. And I want to say it must have been over the weekend they met and they were talking about how they could support, come up with their own peace plan. Basically, that was the headline. They were going to come up with their own peace
competing peace plan.
So, in any case, do your own research. Look at this. But there are, in terms of the forced recruitment here, there are literally thousands of videos on YouTube. And if you want to just see how bad the war is, there's lots of, unfortunately, if you can stomach it, there are lots of battlefield videos that you can look at. We do want to move on to a couple of other things just so we can say the whole show wasn't about Ukraine and Russia. But before we do that, I just want to say I think I can see where it felt kind of awkward watching that presser. I felt a little awkward, but it was necessary. And I think this is going to be another one of those things.
I didn't think it was awkward. I loved it.
Well, what I mean is,
I thought it was awesome.
It's this front and
Did
center.
you watch it, DJ?
Yes.
Did you
watch the whole thing? Or
were you smiling?
Yeah.
Were you smiling in glee?
Well,
be honest.
Yeah, go ahead.
That's okay if we spend too much time on this.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. So I watched it, and my feeling was like I didn't read anything before.
Right.
I just heard. So, and I watched it on, I think it was YouTube's like C-SPAN. So there was no commentary.
Yeah.
And within like 10 minutes, I'm like, oh, this sucks, because you could see Trump, I thought, did an unbelievably good job at being very diplomatic.
Oh, I thought so too.
Like, he kept his cool, and Zelensky just wouldn't let up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know if that's Zelensky being dumb and just doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
Or if he's intentionally trying
He knew
to bomb
exactly
him.
what he was doing.
Because there's like no
I
excuse.
think it was a poor move, but he knew what he was doing.
He knew what he was doing. It was the wrong move, but he knew what he was doing.
I think he's going to regret it.
Yeah, I do too. And I think this is going to be another one of those situations where Trump knew what he was doing, and we find out 5 years down the line that he was right the whole time, just like with the other stuff, you know. And so hopefully this will come, you know, maybe this will come full circle, and it'll go back to a position. And hopefully, you know, we have enough of a, you know, our relationship with England may be enough to pull them out of it, maybe enough to say, hey, don't get involved because, you know, you're going to suck us into your vortex if you get involved. Anyway, on a couple other notes, a couple things that we wanted to talk about in the
Briefly,
in the religion category, some really definitely good news from Pew Research that has done the religious landscape study. I don't know if you've ever answered this. I've actually gotten the email before.
I never have.
Pew Research does this thing called the Religious Landscape Survey. They do it every year, and then they publish the findings. The findings from their most recent one, which would cover, it's like a month in 2023 to a month in 2024. So it's 12 months, but not a proper calendar year. What this has discovered is that after years of decline, the Christian share of the U.S. population appears to have stabilized. So, and there's a kind of a big jump. You see it, you know, from like even the 1980s to, you know, roughly 65 to 70%. The number's at right now about 67%. So I just thought that was interesting, especially since the fastest growing religion in the United States is Islam. At some point, we might do an episode where we kind of dig into that a little bit. What's the effect of the Islamification of a Western country, and what have we seen in Europe? And
Of course, when you're transporting all of them in here,
well,
you're gonna
yeah,
have an increase.
yeah, well, but a lot of them are coming legally. I mean,
Like
especially
there's parts of Buffalo where you feel like you're in a different country.
yeah, that is crazy. Yeah, like the whole like
feel like you're in a sedan
on the
or
west
something.
side.
Yeah.
Well, even Lackawanna, there's a huge mosque in Lackawanna with a school and everything. I don't know if you've ever been.
Oh,
I
there's
don't even know
several
what
big
road
mosques.
that is.
Churches
but-
turn into mosques. Yeah.
Well, this is one they built from the ground up. This is
there's
like
one in Clarence now, a mosque.
yeah, I saw that. Yeah. There was some talk. Now, I'm not far from East Aurora, and for those of you who are listening in other states, these are areas that are around us. There was some talk last year that somebody had come to the planning board about putting a mosque in East Aurora. I think because we have two smoke shops, and they're both owned by, I don't know if they're Arabs, but they're definitely Muslims, and I figured it was probably them. And but I haven't heard anything more about that.
I don't know so much that they're evangelizing, converting people as it is. They're just moving in here. I mean, there is some conversion.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of American conversion to Islam. Not in terms of you know, like if we had to put the numbers down, like how many baptisms are there versus Islamic conversions, I'm guessing the baptisms are still going to be higher. But in terms of share, they're growing, whether it's through conversion or immigration, they're growing at a larger rate. But this is what it says in this research. It says, though significantly down since 2007, the share of Americans who say they pray daily has consistently held between 44 and 46% since 2021. 44% say they pray at least once a day. Similarly, since 2020, the percentage of U.S. adults who say they attend religious services monthly has hovered in the low 30s, but in the new religious survey, it's 33%. So there's a 3%.
It's amazing that
uptick.
monthly is considered regular attendance.
Yeah, well, I mean,
That's what's considered now. I mean, that's an Overton window shift.
well,
I bet if you looked at how they did this,
I mean, the reality
years
though
ago,
is there has never been a time in American history where anywhere near the majority of Christians have attended church.
weekly.
No, not even just weekly. The number has never gone to 50%. When I was in seminary, I did a a course on the history of Christianity in America.
The regular attendance has never been over 50%?
The regular attendance has never been over 50% of those who claim to be Christian.
Defined as once a month?
I don't know that it was always defined as once a month. That I think that would be hard to gauge because, you know who wrote this book was Finke, the guy who wrote the Defense of the Crusades, and he wrote that book about Islam being a problem and all that kind of stuff. If I could think of his first name, you'd know who he is because it's Stark and Finke is who wrote it. It's Stark. He's the guy you would know. He's the guy that wrote. This was about a decade ago. He wrote a book on Islam that drove everybody nuts, where he basically said, this is terrible. It's the religion of the devil kind of thing. And he did a lot of Quranic quotes, and it just pissed all the liberals off and the more moderate, conservatives. But he writes, and what they did is they went back and they grabbed all the available data they could buy, or could find rather, and they put it together with what was the Christian population at the time. And of course, the earlier you go back, the higher the Christian population, because everybody's coming from a European country, They
all claim to be Christian.
Right. Well, there's nothing more than a claim. Now, here's the problem, and this is where you can't, without getting into a theological debate, you cannot define demographics by what you claim.
Right.
That's how demographics are defined, right? It's a self-identity. It's always been a self-identity.
Yeah.
So even when you read our census, it's a self-identity.
Right.
Well, it is accurate because
it's accurate what they self-identify.
It's an accurate, so if we look at, for example, if we talk about culture, how is culture determined? Culture is not determined by practice. Culture is determined by a set of shared beliefs. So you could say, for example, if we were to say 22% out of this survey say that they're not religious. They're not saying they're atheists. They're saying they're not religious. Most of that 22% would say they were spiritual. Most of that 22% was born in America. Most of that 22% has a roots in some form of Christianity. So their spirituality is still Christian. Whether it meets a test for orthodoxy is a different story.
So there's a worldview influence there.
There is a worldview. Culture is about these things that we share. It's not did we get our P's and Q's right, right? And so Western culture is by and large Christian culture. American culture is still by and large Christian culture because 67% of us identify specifically as Christians. The other 22% who don't identify as Christians probably all had some form of Christian upbringing or just influence, because learning American history is learning some form of Christian history.
Yeah.
But if you go back far enough, what you're realizing is that we've never been a church attending people. That's just the case. And some of that might have to do with, and they, anything you say is just an assumption, right? You can only go on what the data shows. And Stark is not a guy who makes assumptions. So the assumptions are very few in that book. And I'll shoot you a screenshot of the book when I get home. But basically, it could be because of the frontier, it could be because of this, it could be because of that, or, whatever the deal is, you just did not have regular church attendance. So, but having an uptick of that once a month church attender, 3% from 30%, it's going the opposite direction. Now, will that hold? I don't know.
Even the plateau is good.
Right. Even the plateau is good. Yeah, because a lot of Christian growth, and we seem to forget this, is a lot of Christian growth. I would venture to say most Christian growth does not come through conversions in the United States. It comes through birth rate. So, and Christians have been on the decline in birth rate for years, for decades.
Unless you're our producer,
who's got a ton of kids.
Yeah, and more to come.
He's got like 10 kids over here. It's so noisy. I don't know how we get anything done. It's crazy.
He is independently fixing the birth rate, Christian birth rate.
Yeah. He's grading on a curve. That's definitely for sure. Right. So anyway, it's good news there. And finally, what else is kind of good news is, we've been noticing more well done Christian media. We talked about Bonhoeffer, probably a month ago. We did a review of Bonhoeffer. And before the show, as we were doing our final prep, we talked about some other Christian movies that have come out, or some, I want to say some other faith-based, but some of them are overtly Christian. Some of them are just faith-based, with a Christian twist kind of thing. We talked about The Case for Christ, which was a movie that didn't suck. I know we talked, I don't know did you ever see Sister Cabrini after we talked about it?
I still haven't seen it.
Yeah, so Sister Cabrini was a good movie.
I actually own it, and I still haven't watched it.
Yeah.
I own it on Amazon.
Yeah, you'll enjoy it.
I'm waiting for my wife to be in the mood to watch it.
Yeah, just watch it. I don't wait for my wife for anything anymore to be in the mood. I go, you know what? I'm just going to watch. She'll say, you already watched 4 episodes? I'm like, you went to bed at 9 o'clock for 4 days in a row. What do you want me to do with myself?
I know. I got to steer up all hours.
Yeah. Well, I don't sleep well. I sleep terrible, so I have to stay up late to be able to sleep.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it's because we're up praying all night.
Yeah, that's it.
So anyway, we watched this new show that came out on Amazon Prime called The House of David. And I'm always a little concerned when it comes out on a major streaming platform. It's not like with The Chosen. It came out on, I know the Angel Studios is owned by Mormons, but it's Christian adjacent. So at least I don't have to question Mormon morality in terms of, what would happen if, they did The Chosen on Netflix first. It would have been a totally different show. So I was a little nervous about it, but we both watched the first episode. So what are your thoughts on
I thought it was really good. For those of you who try to watch it starts a little slow. Yeah, that's just a warning, but it picks up. They have to lay the groundwork. But I thought it was great. I was honestly impressed with how biblical it was. Yeah, they even warned in the beginning, we do take artistic license in this, probably to fend off the Chosen. People who hate The Chosen.
It's to fend off the Calvinists.
Yeah, the Calvinists who hate The Chosen for that reason. Well, Jesus never says that Jesus said that. Yeah. Well, yeah, they have to. There's some artistic license involved here. Right, no one's saying, "Thus saith the Lord."
It's entertainment. Here. It's supposed to be entertainment. It's inspirational, faith-building entertainment,
and the quality's good on it. I thought the acting, the scene, and the costumes and stuff are fantastic.
And the breaking out into Hebrew when is appropriate, and even the scene when they put the scene up like this is Beersheba, it comes in Hebrew first and then the English underneath it, which I thought was kind of a nice touch. Gives it a little bit of sense of authenticity. But I also think that, and I won't say this for certain until we get to the end of the series, but at least the first episode is something that Jewish people could watch, and it's not like it was Christianized.
No, not at all.
It's very much just trying to give.
None of it's Christian, right?
Yeah, it's very much Jewish. An entertaining thing that is about King David. And now, the one thing that stuck out at me that I actually had to go back and look in my Bible for, which was not, again, it's creative license. I get it. I don't have a problem with it. But I was like, wait a minute. I don't think David's mother is ever mentioned in Scripture. I wonder who she was. So it was more like out of a curiosity.
They added that she was like this woman who died early.
Well, yeah, but it actually has some. Happen? Well, no, it has some roots in Jewish tradition.
Oh, okay.
So a Talmudic scholar named Hanan something. In like the 2nd century BC, he was also, what is the word that they use? He was a Talmudic scholar in something else, and I forget it's like a teacher in Israel. And he posited that this was the woman's name because they use her first name in the show, in the episode, Nitzedet or something like that.
I just thought that was all artistic license.
Yeah, and so the story goes in Jewish tradition or in the Talmud, where the story is related by this.
But for those who don't know, the Talmud is oral tradition.
Yeah, it's oral tradition, but since the fall of the Second Temple, it's been written down. So if you have an Orthodox Jewish friend who has what looks like an encyclopedia on his bookshelf called the Mishnah, that's the Talmud. So this guy, Hanan, he relates the story. Her name is Nitzedet or something like that. She was one of Jesse's either wives or concubines. There's a little gray line between
one of Jesse's girls.
One of Jesse's girls.
I wish that I had
Jesse's girl. But she had 6 or 7 kids.
Where can I find a woman like that?
Back in ancient Israel. Like 3,500 years ago, apparently. Apparently they had like 6 or 7 children together. And then the next child, he questions the paternity for some reason, and he won't have anything to do with her anymore.
They're calling him like a bastard or something.
Well, but this is not even this like does
legitimate.
I think it's kind of weird how that's not how that works into the show, because they're making. So what happens in the tradition is that what Nitzedet does, who is the lawful wife of of Jesse, one of the lawful wives of Jesse, is she comes in and she tricks one of his concubines. Not tricks her, but makes a deal with her and says, hey, he's questioning, and I haven't seen my husband in like a year. I want to be with my husband, like I want to know my husband. And so she convinces this concubine to let her sneak in and pretend to be the concubine so she can get it on with her husband. And David is conceived in that process. And then I didn't read past that point. I was like, yeah, okay, that gives me enough of the story. So they're kind of mixing that in, but then they're calling her acting like she's the concubine.
Yeah.
But she really, in the tradition, she's really not the concubine. But I'm okay with that. I mean, obviously David had to have a mom, and who better to know who his mom was than some Jewish dude from
Even if they totally
1800
made that
years
up,
ago.
I'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
It's not like
Who cares?
It's not like it's against the
It's
scripture.
not hurting anything.
Yeah.
And the whole story that happens with her death and all of that. I mean, that's obviously, if she's a figment of the imagination, then that whole thing has got to be a figment of the imagination too. But I still thought they did really well with it.
Yeah, it was great.
I'm looking forward to it. So check it out. If you don't have Prime, find somebody who does and steal their password. Although we're not advocating piracy.
We are not going to announce DJ's Prime password and login, so get your pens ready.
It's I love John Calvin 1975.
Wow.
I can add in. So you guys just started watching The Chosen?
Just started. No. The
This
Chosen, I think I've gotten through like.
I've watched all The Chosen.
Oh, okay.
I watched up to the end of season 3. We started watching 4 and I didn't finish.
Gotcha.
Is that what they're
This
on?
is
They're
the
on
house
are they
of-
on 5 or 6 now?
I believe that 4 is out and
Yeah.
5 is
5 is
being
coming.
recorded. Yes.
So I think we watched maybe like 3 episodes of 4, but then we got to start over because it's
Forget
been
it.
such a long time since we watched it. So, but yeah, I love that show. When it first came out, it was like COVID time, right? So we did like a Zoom thing, and then we had Bible studies at the church. We did it, but as soon as things went back together, people were like, "Yeah, I can watch this at home." So, But I've enjoyed that. There's another thing that's coming out, and we didn't discuss this, but I just saw this the other day. It's called The Last Supper movie, and this is produced by Chris Tomlin, the singer Chris Tomlin.
What's it going to be on?
It's going to be in theaters. It's called The Last Supper. I'll text it to you. The website is thelastsupper.movie, and I think it will start. The first showing times are March 14th. So it's
That's coming up.
kind of like the third week into Lent. We should probably mention, obviously, that Lent is starting in 2 days. Ash Wednesday is Wednesday. If you're a part of a tradition that marks the time during Lent, then we wish you a holy and a blessed Lent as we travel together towards Holy Week and Good Friday and Easter Sunday. Again, if you get a chance, share our episode. Hope you enjoyed it. We will be off next week. We might try to be able to get in and record, but we don't know for sure because Steve is going to England again because he just didn't get enough of Wesley pilgrimages when he was there the first time. And so when he gets back and has time for us, that we'll
I'm going to the promised land.
Yeah, Pittsburgh. The thing about it is my family's from Pennsylvania originally. So do you know where Phillipsburg is? You know where Clearfield County is?
No, is this out east?
So no, it's like in the middle of the state. So it's like in between Pittsburgh and Philly. Okay. So country. It's country. Phillipsburg's probably the biggest area around.
I don't know.
Well, if you know where the Black Mountains are, how it goes right on the New York border. Basically, straight south of there is Cuylertown, PA, which essentially people say, "Oh, your family founded it." No, my family got tired there, and they just decided to build a house.
You're north of Harrisburg quite a bit.
Yeah, north of Harrisburg. Yeah. So, all right. Well, hey, have a good week. We've been putting these episodes out on Friday. I kind of like that. We record on Monday, but I think it's kind of cool to have it go out right before your weekend. So have a good weekend. Get to church. It's the best thing for you. God bless.